So, hi, I am an African Carib indigenous Caribbean woman that goes by the pronouns of she and her. I gratefully and respectfully acknowledge that Toronto is the dish with one spoon territory. I acknowledge that I live and benefit from working within the dish of one spoon territory, the Toronto Purchase and the Williams Treaty. I recognize that Black people share this land since 1608, first arriving to serve as an interpreter to the Matuk language. Since the 16th century, Black people have a long-standing relationship with the territories upon which Ryerson University campus are seated that preceded the establishment of Ryerson University. We all eat out of the dish, all of us that share this territory, with only one spoon. We have to share the responsibility of ensuring that the dish is never empty, which include taking care of the land and the creatures we share it with. Importantly, there are no knives at the table, representing that we must keep the peace. I do not condone the ongoing colonialism that takes place on Turtle Island, which continues to undermine the vital role and sovereignty of indigenous people in our world. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Carol, for opening up with that important land acknowledgement. And I want to say welcome to everyone. I'm really pleased to be able to engage in a dialogue with you today about something that we all have, a body, and what has been happening to our bodies and the body physically and in political movements, and to be able to have this dialogue with a wonderful woman who I've known for many years, Danielle Smith. And we'll introduce her a little bit more, but first I want to just say thank you to CESAR for co-sponsoring this talk, and particularly thanks to all of the executive members, including President Janet Rodriguez, who I see is joining us here today, and Carol Sutherland, the VP Finances and Services, who you just heard from with the land acknowledgement, and all of the staff of CESAR for hosting us. So thank you and welcome to everyone. And welcome to Danielle. I'm so happy you could join us today. And I'm really looking forward to this conversation. You are a Toronto-based movement and performance artist. You're also an athlete, a dancer, a registered massage therapist, a multidisciplinary person. Your bio says that you've kind of bridged the worlds of healing arts and performing arts with a focus on remembering our history as people of African descent, ancestral reclamation, body memory, and particularly movement. I know you're somebody who's worked inside of institutions, and also you've done street performance, you've traveled the world, you've worked with artists and visual artists, you've worked with political people, academics. We're gonna post your full bio, but just to open up, if you could just say a few words about some of your work before we I think you're going to lead us into something that connects us immediately to our bodies as an opening exercise. So do you want to just say a few words about yourself and then lead us into maybe a short exercise that we can all do?
Sure. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. Thank you so much for that introduction, Kike, and thank you, Carol, for the acknowledgement of this land that we're on. I am, like Kike mentioned, a registered massage therapist, a dancer, a mover, an artist. I've been working as a massage therapist for over 2 decades now, working very intimately with many, many bodies. And throughout my work, I tried to work very intimately with my own body, specifically around presence, embodiment, and it's some of what my work demands. And it is translatable actually into and across the bridge that Kike had mentioned, my massage therapy world and my arts performance world. The necessity of embodiment for performance to translate information through movement is some of the focus that I do. With that said, what I'd like to do is invite everyone to do a very simple, like quote unquote, exercise that will just bring us a little bit more present into our bodies and into our environment and where we're at. So it's something very basic and simple, like taking in your environment around you. So using your different senses, and we have multiple senses that we can access. Not everyone has access to all of them, and some have access to others that others do not. So if we can just take a look around your environment, take in the colors that are around, take in the textures of things that you see, take in sound, if you can access that. Take in any smells that you may be aware of. And just become aware of what you feel on your skin, the clothing on your skin, the air on your skin, the surface that you may be on, sitting on or standing on, if you have shoes on or socks or bare feet. You're sitting on a hard chair or on a couch or a supported chair. And with that, take a deep breath in and allow a long, slow exhale. So hopefully that will bring us a little bit more present for the remainder of our conversation today. And that's something that can be done easily, a quick 30-second exercise that could hopefully turn into a practice. And that's one of many other exercises that can be done to help with embodiment and just to bring down the nervous system a little bit to be more present.
Great, thank you. So I'm not, the irony is not lost on me that we're not in our physical presence. And so we're talking about the body in a disembodied kind of format. And we're talking about it particularly in the context of, the university and leading up to a lot of anxieties and stuff like that that are coming up with September rolling around. And I just wanted to kind of sort of ask you, what brings you to do the work that you've done, particularly in the university kind of settings? And how has the academy kind of informed what you do and what you've focused on over the last decade?
It's a great question, Kike. Before I talk about the academy, I'd like to back it up a little bit and kind of get a bird's eye view or present a framework that I see things through and that I approach things through with regards to Turtle Island and the Americas and the history of white supremacy and how we've come to where we are now and the quote unquote founding of the Americas. It's founded on theft, it's founded on kidnapping, it's founded on slavery, and it's founded within rape culture. So when I think about the work that I do, I think about that one of the foundational pieces in what motivates me to do the work that I do. It's not the only one. There is the sense of resilience and joy and magic and strength and incredible, incredible energy that's come from our ancestors and the resilience and resistance that they have practiced and passed on intergenerationally. But to think about things like the academy, the educational industrial complex that it has become. And, you know, ironically, thinking specifically about Ryerson and the university named after this man who was responsible for residential school system and responsible for, and has been credited for the formation of education in Toronto, in Canada, and how that educational system can be one that is very disembodying. Mm-hmm. You know, it's fantastic as far as the information that we have and the access to information that we have, but I always question, where does that information come from? How is it formulated? How is it shaped? What is the methodology in which that knowledge is transferred? You know, like just a personal example, and that's very simple, that some people may be able to relate to, like as a child going to school, having to sit in these lines in rows of desks and sitting for hours to take in information that demands that you leave your body in particular ways, demands that you disconnect from your body in particular ways because you're stationed in one place. Mm-hmm. And depending on what type of learner someone is, they may be a kinesthetic learner where movement, like myself, where movement is a way that I actually integrate information. There could be visual learners where visual stimulation helps people to integrate things. So you can imagine a visual learner having the opportunity to be like out in nature or to have multiple colors and different palettes to take information in versus a monotone cement wall that's surrounding you. You know, like those are just a couple of examples.
Sometimes just going into the classroom is depressing.
Right? You can actually feel your energy start to either drop down or come into like a tunnel vision, like a very focused tunnel vision about, I need to get a task done. This is what I have to do. And I have to get rid of all of this other information and all of this other access to information and ways that our bodies can access and ways that our minds can access this information, because our minds and our bodies aren't separate. Our minds, our bodies, our spirits are not separate. They are all interconnected. They all have relationships with each other. And even thinking in terms of that, relationships with each other, it's like relationships of different parts of our whole. So when we think about the academy, that's one of the things that happens oftentimes, is that there is a stimulation, an intellectual stimulation, but there is often a disconnect that happens between our intellect and our cognitive functioning and what's happening on a physiological and a biological level in our body, which can, those physiological and biological processes in the body can help to inform our intellect, can help to inform knowledge creation, can help to inform the transmission of knowledge.
Yeah, and I think in an earlier conversation, you and I were talking about how I was relating to you that I was in a situation where I asked for a classroom where I could, you know, seat people in a round so that we could all actually see each other's faces and sort of relate to each other in a different way. And I actually participated in a forum at Ryerson where we did just that. There was food available. We sat in a round. The lighting was natural lighting, and people, I found, kind of opened up, and the conversation became much more rich, much more relaxed, and much more, more people participated because there was like a kind of welcoming space that was created. And I think that's something that's really, you know, important as we, you know, sort of bandy about this language about decolonizing the academy, or, you know, all of this kind, or indigenizing the academy and stuff like that, that we don't all come into these spaces with the same ability physically. And also we don't all come with the same kind of maybe family history of engaging and talking about intellectual ideas in a certain way, or, and we may have created our knowledges in part from our bodily experiences as well.
Absolutely.
So all of that is really key. And now I think it's more important for us to be thinking about these issues as we consider what education looks like going forward. but also as COVID continues. And we've talked about COVID in sort of academic spaces in terms of the politics of it, sort of resources, the budget, political decisions that are being made and stuff like that. But COVID is also sort of, as many people have pointed out, revealed a lot of the inequities in our society, and how, in fact, we've been facing many different kinds of traumas in a way, many different kinds of pandemics, not just COVID, but just also exacerbated racism, sexism, transphobia, homophobia, all of these other things that have been kind of impacting our bodies, ableism, ageism, which we haven't really discussed very much anymore. So how does all of this, impact the body? What are you seeing in terms of this particular moment that we're living in? And yeah, just.
Thank you for pointing that out. Yeah, I heard the term recently, the twin pandemic of COVID and racism. And like you've mentioned, Kike, of all of these other isms, there have been many pandemics. COVID is recent, and the intensity of COVID, I think, has been the breaking point to reveal all these other pandemics that have been here for centuries. And we see through COVID that particular demographics are being more affected than others. It's folks who have already been impacted by the way the system has been implemented and how the system is functioning. The carryover of slavery into policing in a particular way. There's certain groups of people who are targeted by police in particular ways, where this systemic violence is perpetuated. And now COVID has revealed that. And heading into the fall with COVID, there's going to be so many things that we're going to need to take into consideration with the change of season, with flu season, what is typically known as flu season coming, having to make adjustments again that we've been forced into in March and April at the beginning of the pandemic, that we were forced into in June with the passing of George Floyd, and then with Regis Kretinsky-Paquette, and all of the uprisings that have happened in June. There was this cracking open, this breaking open that's happened that we've all had to adjust and adapt to, and that's going to be taking place, I think, again, come September in 2 weeks when school is starting again, because it's a major shift for everyone. And then seasonally, what's going to be taking place. The impact on the body specifically, I like to think of things through a trauma-informed lens, because what I had mentioned before with regards to the foundation of the Americas, how the current system that we're functioning right now, how that was founded, has been sourced in trauma, has caused trauma, and perpetuates trauma. So through a trauma-informed lens, what I like to think about is how the body responds to it. And I keep on referring to the body, but I just want to remember or remind everyone, the body, the mind, the spirit, all connected. So how we as a system, our own individual system, responds to trauma, there's usually an order of responses that happen. The first one is biological. Usually the second one is emotional. And then the third one is an intellectual one. So what I'm going to do is compare something that is easily recognizable to something that is persistent and much more insidious, that many people experience, but is persistent, unfortunately, with all of these isms. Mm-hmm. The one that is most easily recognizable and easy to describe is if someone avoids a car accident. Let's say if a pedestrian is walking across the street and a car is approaching, all of a sudden makes a turn and is heading towards that individual. That individual isn't going to stop and think, oh, I better move. There isn't necessarily a thought process or an emotional response to it. There is this response in the nervous system of survival. Like, I'm going to die if I don't move, I got to get out of here. So that's the first immediate thing that happens. That is an actual physical movement from one place to another. there's all these other movements or all these other processes that happen in the body on a physiological level that is comparable and parallel to other particular threats that could trigger survival mechanisms, threats that are normalized, threats that are insidious, like the things that we talked about, like anti-Black racism, anti-Indigenous racism, xenophobia, homophobia, transphobia. If there's a threat to someone's well-being, the body, depending on what the history of trauma is, depending on what's happened developmentally through individuals' lives, there could be the same sort of response, a survival response, where on a physiological level, our heart rate goes up, our breathing gets shallow, all the blood will leave our core of our body to go to our limbs to be able to run. Like we go into that same mechanism. So if people are being faced with these sort of threats, threats to our well-being, whether it be literally our bodies being hit by a car, or whether it be these microaggressions that aren't necessarily micro.
Yeah.
But
that's the micro part.
Right? They're termed that way because of the normalization of them. Yeah. I think like there's an awareness that's starting to come around this that makes them still micro. That doesn't actually engage the impact of them in a way that looks at what the accumulative effect is of them. So there's all of these things that happen in the body that, you know, over a long-term period can lead to things like IBS, like chronic fatigue syndrome, like adrenal
IBS being?
IBS, sorry, is irritable bowel syndrome. Fibromyalgia, like all of these illnesses that, ironically or not so ironically, when we look at the medical industrial complex or allopathic medicine, don't really know how to address and don't really know how to treat other than prescribing pharmaceuticals, which usually...
We're talking about like the tension headaches and the chronic fatigue and anxiety, depression.
Yes. All of these things, even with anxiety and depression, the anxiety that people are feeling when they're dealing with these sort of ongoing microaggressions or threats activate the nervous system in a particular way, which then lead to these biological processes and a stress. I don't want to necessarily say a breakdown, but definitely a stress on these other systems in the body, like the adrenals that are pumping out adrenaline and cortisol that start to get fatigued. When you hit a certain threshold, it's like they are just going to conk out. When they conk out, all these other things start to happen. Our sleep gets interrupted. If our nervous system is keyed up too much and we don't know how to bring it down, insomnia kicks in. Everything can start to become this negative feedback loop or this reoccurring loop that feeds into each other. All these symptoms can start to feed into each other. And, you know,
particularly after the weeks following the news breaking out about Regis Korchinski-Paquette and George Floyd, people were sharing so much on social media and there were the protests and stuff like that. And a recurring sort of question that I saw people asking each other is anyone sleeping? Is like, what's happened to just that basic ability to just switch off and rest and restore?
Yeah, that's super accurate. So all of these processes that take place in the body, it's things like traditional Chinese medicine. It's all these quote unquote alternative medicines that you usually start to be able to address all of these symptoms that allopathic medicine, you know, it has its place. It keeps us alive. It has amazing imaging for MRIs and stuff like that and diagnostic tools. But as far as treatment and quality of life, allopathic medicine has its limitations.
What's the difference with, like you just referenced traditional Chinese medicine? What might be some of the differences with non-Western ways of approaching health?
It's literally a whole different framework and a different lens that our bodies, our systems, our minds, our spirits are being approached or being addressed. Like for instance, I'm not a TCM practitioner. I know like the tip of the iceberg of the information of a very, very deep art of medicine. Let's say the liver meridian. We have our liver as an organ, and the liver meridian travels through the body. But the liver meridian doesn't just address the liver, it addresses the emotion of anger. It helps to process that. So if, say, we have a diet that we don't have a lot of greens to help to digest a lot of stuff and to metabolize a lot of fats in our body, let's say, the liver itself will have difficulty metabolizing that and digesting that. And at the same time, we may have difficulty digesting and metabolizing anger, or there could be, when people talk about chi being stuck, those emotions could be stuck in different areas of our bodies, manifesting these physiological processes and physiological manifestations in our bodies where illnesses start to occur. So it's an approach to the body that is looking at the whole system of the body, not just symptoms that may be.
Basically, an interconnectedness of the entire.
Yeah.
Is the main difference. Yeah.
Yeah. It's the interconnectedness and this web of different information and different connected points of how our systems work.
So I was wondering if you could expand a little bit more about what it means to, what the term trauma-informed movements is, or trauma-informed care. What does that sort of start to look like if we consider that we're talking about traumas that go beyond recognized impacts like a car accident or cancer, but we start to include all of the various forms of inequities and isms that we just touched on?
Mm-hmm. I think with regards to trauma-informed movements, I think it's something that's really important to start to integrate more in our movements to prevent burnout, to be able to add another layer into the information and the tools that we already have to be able to address these issues that we're facing. To take in rest and to be able to rest, to repair, to build resilience, to be able to continue the work that we need to do. In saying that, I just want to clarify what I mean by resilience, because in conversations that I've had, there's kind of like two camps of opinion on resilience. One is like this disagreement this disagreement of resilience as being necessary for the movement, and that it's interpreted in a sense that, we need to be resilient to just survive, basically. We need to be resilient just to maintain ourselves in where things are to survive the system and how it is. When I use resilience, I'm thinking of it as a way of this flexibility and strength to not only continue to survive the system, but to renew ourselves in ways that we can keep on fighting the good fight that needs to happen, and renew ourselves in ways to continue to imagine a new world and continue to create new worlds. When I think about resilience, it's a way of renewing to create new, as well as just maintaining, getting by on our day-to-day, on a day-to-day level, to continue to move forward into something new and something healthier. So the need for trauma-informed movements, I think, is really important. When we're thinking about rest, the term rest for resistance, when we're thinking about what needs to take place to be able to rest, like we were talking about earlier, how insomnia can kick in and we're not able to access the rest and recovery that we need to be able to continue on.